Do you feel like you're always chasing your tail? Like there's always a huge to-do list and you just can't get on top of it? You know you need a better system, but implementing that is a whole other to-do list. If all that sounds familiar, tune in for today's episode with Kim Hamblin, where she shares actionable advice as we break down all the systems that can help you free up more time in your business. And if you, like me, love Kim's approach and would love to learn from her further, definitely check out all the links in the show notes. She does offer a plug and play solution to get all these systems implemented once and for all. And if you are a member, we even have special savings for you. So jump into the show notes and check out those links.
Welcome to the Pet Photographers Club. Tune in as experts share their insights to help grow your business with higher sales, creative marketing, and kick-ass business strategies. Now on to the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Pet Photographers Club. I'm Kirsty McConnell and today I'm chatting with Kim Hamblin of Kim Marie Coach. Welcome to the club, Kim.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for joining me. So before we get started, I just want to wind back a bit and give the listener a bit of an intro into who you are, because let's be honest, sometimes we hear the word coach and we make an incorrect judgment. So just to clarify, you were not a pet photographer specifically, but you did have a very successful studio in New Zealand, which you have now sold, something we don't see very much. So maybe you can fill in the gaps a little bit here and give the listener a bit of a picture of what your photography studio did look like before you sold it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the photography studio that I built started very simply, and probably like a lot of photographers do. Started with one camera and a bit of an idea. And I grew my weekend hobby to be a full family studio. So we specialized in newborns and families. Toward the time where I sold it, we were focusing more on pets, but I would never say that we were pet photographers. No, but I grew the studio so that I had a team of people, which was amazing. I had the best team. If any of them are listening to this, oh my gosh, I miss you girls. And we worked very systematically in our business. So we had set days for working. And we built the studio up where we all had life balance as well. That was a really key important thing about what I was trying to do, was provide life balance for me and the people I work with and run a profitable business and eventually sell it when I was ready to move into coaching. So definitely a long journey. It was about sort of 12 years from start to finish, if you like. And I'd always wanted to be a coach, and I never wanted to be a coach without a background in real business. So whilst I might not have been a pet photographer, I do love and am passionate about the business of running a portrait photography business. So I guess that's the main thing. And then, of course, as you mentioned, I did sell the studio. It was just on a year ago, or just over a year ago. And I sold everything. I don't even own a camera anymore. And yeah, loving this new journey into coaching. Is so exciting and rewarding.
And I know, Kim, that at least one of our club members has done some coaching with you now. I'm not going to name drop because I actually didn't ask her if I could.
Yeah.
She has privately given some very good feedback. And so I might actually see if I'm allowed to share it, and I'll put it in the show notes if that's cool. But basically, I got you on the show today because I wanted to chat all about systems. And I've heard you say that you wouldn't have even been able to sell your business without the systems that you had in place. And even for the photographer that's not wanting to sell, it's certainly important, as you certainly know, to help everything run smoothly too. But we do hear the word systems, and it kind of has that kind of vibe, a bit like consultant, like that can mean almost anything, and it's a little bit intimidating. So let's chat about that, and maybe why it doesn't have to be intimidating, and what we mean when we say systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I was sort of building my business, the idea of systems were not just intimidating, but they also sounded incredibly boring. It was like, oh, I came here to be a photographer. I want to be a creative. I don't want to do all this kind of corporate sounding stuff. But once I realized the importance of them, they made so much sense, and they made such a difference. Because one thing I left out of my little story just before about my background is that I grew my business as a single mom. So time was so limited. Energy was pretty limited. And once I realized what a difference those systems could make to both my time and energy, everything just went smoother. So I know they sound boring, they sound intimidating, but what they can do is save you time, and they actually mean that your business runs smoother when you have them in place. It means that you're never reinventing the wheel. So you're always following a step-by-step process. And I know that sounds boring for a lot of artistic photographers, but ultimately it frees you up a lot more to be the creative that you're passionate about being, and spend more time doing those creative shoots and working with your beautiful clients and dogs without having to worry about the back end, because when you've got those systems in place, things take care of themselves. For example, automation is a big part of a lot of the systems that I like to put in place, which means that you can be out doing your work, photographing your beautiful clients. Meanwhile, those emails that you don't have to go and do yourself, they're getting sent automatically all by themselves, which is really great. Things don't get missed. When you've got systems in place, you don't accidentally forget one piece of an order, which I'm sure people here would never do, but I know I have. Also, I built a team because I had systems. So because I had the systems in place, it meant that when I was training people to do the jobs within the studio, they literally had a step-by-step process that they could follow each time. And it was all recorded so they could go back to it and refer to those processes. And I know this is all probably sounding very boring, but I get so excited and passionate about them because they literally changed my business forever. And I love it. I get really excited when I get to help others put them in.
Yeah, definitely. And who doesn't want to save time, right? I mean, no matter what your personal life looks like, everybody these days is filling every minute of their day, whether it's because they have time commitments to a horse or a child or a full-time job as well as their business or whatever it might be. Everybody's busy, or maybe they're just like me and they just like traveling way too much. And who doesn't love being able to free up more time? So the concept of systems might be a little bit boring at first, but once you start putting these things in place, it becomes a bit addictive because every system frees up that little bit more time, right?
Absolutely. And you start to recognize those areas where you can implement new things. It's like, oh, this is a repetitive task. I'm going to record it. I'm going to create a step-by-step process. And now I've got a system. And who can I give this to? So yeah, it definitely gets very addictive. And yeah, I won't say they become fun, but they definitely do make business feel so much easier. So if you're someone who struggles with that business side of things and sort of finds that you'd rather be behind the camera, by doing this, you get to run a better business without having to be stuck in it all the time. And that life business balance is so, so important. Essentially, when you've got that, it means that you can work less and earn more. So I guess that's the crux of it all is, less time, sitting behind the computer, more time enjoying life and earning more money. So it's a win-win.
Definitely. Okay, so I do want to break down all the different systems that you're talking about, and we will in just a second. But before we get to that, you mentioned just then that when you find yourself doing a repetitive task, that you would think, oh, hang on, I got to stop, I got to record this, and I'm going to systematize it.
Okay. So once I started building my team, I realized that anything that was done more than once in my business was a repetitive task, which meant that if I could break it down, one, it helped me eliminate unnecessary steps. Two, it helped me move faster and get the task done quicker. And three, it helped me to pass it on to someone else, which was always my goal. I valued time more than money. At the end, it was like, who can I give this to in a way that makes it easier? So the actual recording was, first of all, a manual process. I would write down the steps or jot it onto a document or something like that. And then I would actually grab my screen recorder. So I use a program called Loom. So if you haven't heard of this, it's a screen recorder. It captures your screen and just makes a video of whatever you're doing. And I would talk through the process and do little mini videos. Like, for example, if it was putting a new client into our CRM, here's how to do it step by step. And it meant that when the time came to hand that over, they just had to watch the video. I didn't have to be there all the time showing someone else how to do it. I didn't have to answer the questions again and again. How did I do that again? Where is that? Because they had the resources right at their fingertips to be able to go and do it themselves. So that was a really powerful tool. But also just the process of mapping it out, you find that you're often doing things unnecessarily, and you're forced to ask those questions of, can I do this better? Can I be more efficient? Can I do this quicker? Do I need to do this at all? And so therefore, when you're actually mapping out those steps, you're already starting to save time, in your business, which is fantastic.
Definitely. So that means that this is like an evolving thing, right? I mean, nobody's going to be able to just sit down for a solid month and map out every single system that they've ever done in their business. So we can all, the next time we come across a task that we're doing for even the second time only, is we can realize, oh, hang on, let me just hit record and save that in some kind of system as well, I imagine, in a folder that's appropriate.
Oh, absolutely.
And then move on with the rest of our task. And it's not really going to add much more time to our day because it's a simple screen recording. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest sort of part of the time frame is actually mapping out what it is you're going to record. So, for example, I would break down my business into separate areas. And I know I've got 7 main areas, which I know we're going to cover in a moment. But each of those areas, I'd map down the task. So I might start with, for example, my scheduling system. What are the tasks that need to be done? What are the steps that we need to take? And so even just mapping down the steps, even if they're not recordable steps, that still becomes part of that system. So then it's like I can be very deliberate about doing one part or one system or a set of systems at once. So not having to jump around and go, what did I record yesterday? And it becomes like a mishmash because, as you mentioned, it's ever evolving, it's ever growing. I think it took me, when I sat down to do it properly, it probably took me a good couple of months.
Wow.
But the biggest part was mapping it out and thinking, what are the little details that I want to systemize? So I think I found the list for someone just recently of one part of it, and it was like 20 or 30 things in one area. But it made everything run smoother. And it also kept me in line because it's like, okay, well, I've done that, so I don't need to do that again, or I still need to do this one. So you have to be systemized in creating the systems. But it does make a difference once you've got that list written down, and then you just go through one at a time. When you've got 5, it might be one thing a day or a couple of things a day. And before you know it, you've got an entire video library or systems library that you can put into a program such as Thinkific. I recommend that because it's free, and share with the people who you want to offload things to. So it makes it really simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just break that down a little bit, and we will go through all of the 7 steps that you talk about, or the 7 different aspects of the system, I suppose. But let's just stick with what you said then, the first one, scheduling system. Could you just give an example as to one of those parts that you said was one of the 20 or 30 of your scheduling system that you would document? Let's just go through like an example.
Okay, fantastic. So one of the things that we did with scheduling is we had set days for different things in our studio. So if somebody wanted to come in and have a portrait sitting, those times and dates were already loaded in our CRM. So my team, myself, we could all see what was available. So we had to put those into the system. And so there was actually a set way to do that so that it wasn't like putting everything in one by one by one, because we were doing quite a few, sessions per week. So that would have just taken forever. And so one of the systems was, how do we put those appointments in our calendar for the next 2-3 months in advance? Because we were usually booking 2 or 3 months ahead of the time. So that was just one example. Other things were, what appointments are we putting in there? When do they work? But also that was like, how do we then fill those sessions? What are the steps that we take in putting it into the CRM? So that was more the CRM side of things. We did have also the booking process, like how do we book in a client? What do we say? When do we say it? So there was quite a lot of different steps. The things that could be recorded were recorded, like screen captured, but there were some times where it was literally just talking at a slideshow, and I'd create a slideshow and record the slideshow with me explaining something. If it wasn't something that I could show, it was more something I had to share. So having a really clear idea of how your business operates and what you need to put in place will actually save you a lot of time if you do that at the beginning, and then just go through each part of it one by one.
Yeah, okay, that makes total sense. Okay, that's a good example for scheduling systems. Can you just give me an overview? What are the other 6 parts that you would say are integral to setting up your systems?
Awesome. So your booking system and onboarding system for your clients, like how do you communicate with them? What do they need to know at what point of their journey with you?
Mm-hmm.
Financial systems, that was more my end rather than my team's end, but how much do things cost? Where does the money go? What does it cost to run the studio? How do we track that? Then we had sales systems. So how do we actually make sure we get the sales that we need to stay in business, the products, the pricing? How do we do the production systems? So that's obviously the order placing. What is the production workflow? Marketing system. What are the different systems that we use in marketing to ensure that we are fully booked for, 8 to 10 weeks in advance? And then finally, I had team and hiring systems, which is, of course, what all of this leads into, is how do I hire the right people? Who are they? Where are they? How do I find them? So that's an overview of the 7 main ones anyway.
Wow. Okay. So when you rattle them off like that, like boom, 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 these are all the things you need. I'm thinking, okay, yeah. I mean, I've got all of those, or I had all of those with Pizza Bernard, for example. But that's just kind of the title of that system. But when I think about it and break that down into all little things within each of those, this is becoming like quite a big, robust system now that we're needing to build. And I totally understand why you were saying that you could just screen capture. That's the easiest way, using Loom or whatever platform somebody wants to use. And then popping it into Thinkific is really smart. So just for the listener that maybe isn't that familiar with Thinkific, it's that's the system that the Pet Photographers Club used to be on. We're currently migrating. So most of the listener would be familiar with that from the user side. But on the back end, it's also super simple, isn't it? It's a course building platform, I suppose, online course, which means you can segment into modules or chapters, put lessons, but in your case, it would be not really lessons, but breakdowns into each of them. I mean, that's a super simple way to keep it organized. And if you only have one course, using like little talking marks here, then it's free, as you said. So that's actually a really good tip to store all of this information. So I want to break down each of these independent 7 systems further, but I reckon that we're going to keep that for part 2, which is for our members of the club. So let's wrap up part 1 now. But before we do that, can you just let the listener know how they can find you, and maybe also about this PDF that we're going to talk about in part 2 as well?
Fantastic. The easiest way to find me is on Instagram, and that's simply at Kim Marie Coach. So that's where I sort of update every few days with little tips and tricks, and you can reach out to me and ask me questions. I'm always happy to chat through the chat there. If you want to check out my website, it's www.kimmarie.co. And yeah, as you've said, I've got a wee PDF for everybody today with these 7 systems, what's in each of the systems, and of course, a little bit of a snippet that will get you started on creating your own, because of course, yours will be different to mine. So I cover that in the PDF, and that's all there for you.
Excellent. And if you miss anything, I did take all the notes for you. So just head on over to the petphotographersclub.com and search for Kim. And of course, if you are a member, jump into the member zone or listen to your private RSS feed, the full episode. Don't forget that if you're not a member, you can continue listening to this episode. If you join today, it's just $10 a month, and membership includes loads of perks and bonus content like the rest of this interview, where we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of all of this to make it a little bit less overwhelming and help you walk through the steps of implementing some systems in your business.
Thanks for listening to the Pet Photographers Club. To subscribe to the podcast, check out other episodes, and keep up to date, head to thepetphotographersclub.com.